The regularly scheduled 8 p.m. train on the Ohio and Mississippi Railroad left Cincinnati bound for St. Louis on May 5, 1865. There were 4 passenger coaches, a baggage car, and an Adams Express Company car carrying cargo and freight. More than 100 passengers were on board. Just 17 miles from Cincinnati, near the village of North Bend, the conductor, Mr. Shepard, saw that the rail lines up ahead had been destroyed, but the train was moving too fast. He could not stop the locomotive before a catastrophe. As the train derailed, the engine, baggage, and Adams car flipped onto their sides, badly damaged. The passenger cars plowed into the mess, but stayed upright. The poor travelers, shaken from the horrifying crash, had no idea what lay in store. Almost immediately, they heard shouts, quote, "Don't move or you'll have your brains blown out," close quotes, followed by a volley of gunshots. 2 armed men entered each car with 2 more outside guarding the perimeter. One newspaper reported, quote, "While everything was wild with confusion, the desperados entered and with vilest oaths demanded the money and valuables of the passengers," close quote. A soldier returning from the Civil War had $300 stolen. Another man lost his gold watch and $500 in cash. While the terrified passengers were busy handing over their valuables, the real target of the attack was the Adams Company car. Using an axe, 5 bandits dragged 3 safes out into the open and used gunpowder to blow off their doors. Inside, they discovered $30,000 in bonds worth about $7 million today. All told, there were about 20 bandits involved in the Great Train Robbery, the first train robbery in American history. Almost as quickly as they pulled off the attack, the robbers slipped onto skiffs and made their way across the Ohio River and into Kentucky. In the Bluegrass State, they stole several horses and headed into the central part of the Commonwealth. Because of the precision and planning that it took to pull off the attack, investigators speculated that the bandits may have been angry Confederate guerrilla soldiers who did not accept the South's recent surrender only a month earlier. They were armed with Navy revolvers, which lent to the hypothesis, as did their retreat into the Kentucky hinterland. Although they were all dressed in civilian clothing, passengers heard one bandit addressed as lieutenant and another as captain. Well, as soon as the authorities heard of the Great Train Robbery, militia and cavalry units were dispatched from Cincinnati, Covington, and Louisville. The men were never captured, which led many people to speculate that it wasn't the work of guerrillas, but instead soon-to-be legendary outlaws such as Jesse and Frank James or the Reno Gang. The Reno Gang later became infamous for committing a string of train robberies across the Midwest through 1868. Although hundreds searched for the gang, it was as if they had vanished into thin air.
And appearing right now before your very eyes is the man who unearths these dark mysteries, cultural historian Bob Batchelor. Bob, thanks so much for talking to us this morning.
Thanks, Clyde.
So let's talk a little bit about the ramifications, if you will, of this first train robbery. What happened because of this?
Well, amazingly, you would think these dastardly deeds would go down in the annals of history as something bad, but absolutely the opposite happened. People romanticized train robbery. And so for 100 years, we have movies and films, and then later television shows, everything from the first blockbuster, The Great Train Robbery in 1903, through Bonnie and Clyde stories and Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Everybody loves these stories. And so I started to think, are there still train robberies today? And it's an unbelievable number. $30 billion is still stolen through cargo and freight to this day. So we don't romanticize it, but it's still a heck of a story and a big problem for law enforcement.
And I'm guessing those robberies don't look exactly like the ones that we traditionally think of.
Yeah, I don't think you and I are going to go out and get on any horses with pistols anytime soon, Clyde.
No, I know that for sure in my case. So let's talk about North Bend for a moment, because that seems to be a community with a lot of history attached to it. So what else can you tell us about the village?
Yeah, can you imagine this little small town, this first train robbery in American history, but it's also was founded by a guy named Sims, who was a Revolutionary War hero and land speculator. He was the father-in-law of William Henry Harrison, the famous president who only lived for 41 days in office, maybe most famous for Tippecanoe and Tyler too, but then also the grandson of Benjamin Harrison. So this little town is the birthplace of two presidents, and local history buffs can see all kinds of Harrison history, and in Miami University, which Benjamin Harrison graduated from. So there's a lot of local history. When it's safe to travel again, North Bend would be a really interesting little place to check out.
Well, so let's talk a little bit about more about how people can connect with the many true crime, tri-state true crime stories you have, or for that matter, all of your other historical works as well. How do people connect with you, Bob?
It's easiest on my website, which you'll see at the bottom of the screen. I'd also like to mention, I wouldn't have pursued this train robbery story, but a viewer wrote to me, and I get a lot of mail from fans and people who want me to explore different stories. This one came directly from a viewer. So you can find me on Facebook. You can find me at my website. I'm also on Twitter at Bob P. Batchelor. That's my Twitter name. So very easy to find me, and it still stands for all our viewers out there, whether you're watching on Facebook or live or on YouTube. If you have a true crime story that you'd like me to investigate, send it along.
All right, that's great. That's great. Bob, thanks so much. We appreciate you stopping by this morning.
Have a great day, Clyde.
Thank you, sir. You too.